Good morning. Thank you all for joining us for the Ethical Humanist Society of Chicago's Sunday morning program. My name is Sherry Pollack, and I'm a member of the Society and co-chair of our Sunday program committee, and I'll be your moderator this morning. For those of you joining us for the first time, the mission of the Ethical Humanist Society is to create a supportive and inclusive humanist community that inspires all to be their best selves, sustains us throughout life's milestones with celebrations, memorials, and festivals, respects science, art, and nature, promotes critical thinking and rational ways to solve human problems, and creates opportunities to take action to bring about a better world for all. Normally, we come together on Sunday mornings at our brick and mortar facility in Skokie, but of course, the COVID-19 pandemic precludes us for now from gathering face to face. So we've been offering our programs virtually and look forward to the day that we can safely be together again in the same space. In order to help build a better shared understanding of who we are as a community and what we as humanists believe in, we typically begin our programs with a brief reading or quote. And today I offer this definition of humanism from the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a progressive philosophy of life that, without theism or other supernatural beliefs, affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. Our programs address a wide variety of topics, including philosophy, religion, science, and politics, to name just a few. Today's program is a convergence of the arts, current events, and Chicago stories. It's my pleasure to introduce Vashon Jordan Jr., who's a 21-year-old visual artist born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. He uses photography and videography to showcase authentic stories and moments that reflect the people of Chicago. Vashon enjoys engaging with youth across the city to inspire and encourage them to follow their dreams. He received his associate in arts from Kennedy King College and is currently studying at Columbia College, Chicago. Welcome, Vashon.
Hello, good morning. Thanks so much for having me on.
So glad to have you.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Once again, my name is Vashon Jordan, and I'm here to talk about the Chicago protests over the summer of 2020 and my latest book, Chicago Protests, A Joyful Revolution, which is available on Amazon. Just a little bit more about me. I'm a photographer, as you guys heard, and I do a lot of freelance work in Chicago. The majority of what I've done has involved me taking photos at school, of my friends, any type of freelance gigs that I've gotten. But outside of that, I do a lot of work just around Chicago events, just moments that really shape the city. Of course, that also includes protests and happenings of that nature. Over the summer of 2020, we saw a large, civil uprising and people taking the streets all over the country. But here in Chicago, there was a lot of protests that happened. The very first one that I attended was on May 30th. During May 29th, that was really the first protest that began. I watched all of that through Facebook Live and social media videos that were coming out of people just talking about what was going on downtown. And then from there, I went out to May 30th, cover the protest. I really expected it to be more of a one and done kind of deal. That's what we typically see. Folks may come out to a protest, lift their voices, show whatever their movement is, and then life kind of goes on. But from this one, I noticed that there was this reckoning where people were continuing to come out and continuing to talk about what was going on. So the first week was May 30th. The second week I went out was on June 6th. And that was the Chicago March of Justice. 38,000 people came out, took to the streets, marched. They rallied in Union Park, marched all the way to Seward Park for another rally. So from there, I noticed, okay, this is something that needs to be talked about. So for me, as a Black man, this is a fight that I feel deeply connected to because we're out here lifting up the voices of Black lives. And this is really spurred by the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. And these are, Black people such as myself. So I felt that my contribution to this movement could be by way of photography. A lot of times we look at the media's perception of protest, the media's perception of Black people, and we talk about how they may not always get the story right. So what I want to do is make sure that I'm coming out here as an independent photographer, able to tell the story from a firsthand perspective, a primary source of what I see and what's going on. And just to give you a little bit of background on that, there's a difference between independent and freelancer. And the reason I say independent is because all of the photos you're going to see today was not shot for any news outlet. I wasn't paid to take those photos. I wasn't assigned to take those photos. All of that was just me going out with my own gear on my own time, my own dime to capture these photos. From there, I really thought about putting the book together after a couple people were giving me the idea, and I decided to go ahead and put it together. It took me 5 weeks to make over September, and the book released on October 16th. All of that was put together just in an effort to make sure that I'm stamping down in history what's going on, what's happening in time, and really make sure that everyone's able to witness what went on if you weren't able to, of course, make it out. So what I want to do from here is just kind of go through some of my top photos from the summer. I have 17 that I picked out, just give you a little bit of background on what happened, just to show the diverse range of protests that we saw this summer. And then from there, we'll do the Q&A portion. If you guys have any questions as we're going through the actual photos, feel free to drop those in the chat and I'll take care of those as we're going through if you have questions about specific photos. So the first photo that we're going to pull up is from the May 30th protest. And this was a clash on the Wabash Avenue Bridge. So protesters marched from Federal Plaza and they went over to Trump Tower. And here, as you can see in the background, the bridges are raised. That was one of the biggest moments of the summer. And actually the back cover of the book is a photo of one of the bridges being raised because that cut off the access of people going from the Loop area further north here in Chicago. And in the top right corner of the photo, you can see a sign that says, "No justice, no peace." And I thought that was one of the things that really spoke to why people were coming out, why they were doing this. And I thought that this photo was very interesting because you see a woman and there are two different hands there gesturing towards a police officer, and there's a man using his back to sort of protect them and keep them safe from the officer. And one of the moments with this photo that you're going to see in the book is shortly after this photo was shot, the man that has his back to the officers was removed by police officers and arrested. And they arrested all of the men that were there protecting the women. And then from there, they started to push the crowd back. But that was just on May 30th. After that, we noticed that the bridges were lifted routinely. They were lifted in advance, just in the effort to make sure that no one was able to go to and do anything at Trump Tower. And the next photo here that I'm going to pull up, this is from that June 6th protest that I talked about with the 38,000 people. And with this photo, this was the Chicago March of Justice. And that is Don Brown and K-Buzz, two organizers from Activate Shy. And that was an organization that came about this summer, and they put this together in about 5 days because they really just felt moved to action and to do something to really make sure that we're lifting up our voices. And, you see a lot with Black men and just men in general and how we're looked at as these, masculine creatures almost who don't have feelings and don't have emotions. So when you're going through this fight in this movement and you're looking at Black death, that's very traumatic. So when you have moments like this where folks are coming together in support, the only thing you can really do in that moment is cry and let out all that emotion. So I really wanted just to show this as there's a range of what Black people go through when we're feeling this and we're seeing these images of lives being taken away senselessly and carelessly by police officers especially. So you see a Black man being comforted by a Black woman and another Black woman behind him with the megaphone, with her fists up in the air, continuing it. And you also see a ton of white allies there because I saw a lot of unity this summer with people coming together, wanting to push towards a more equitable world for everyone and wanting to push for people coming together to use their own powers to make sure that collectively we can move forward as a society and make sure that we're all coming out and just trying to contribute our part. So this photo here is just a scene where it's like, it really just speaks to the importance of photography, because if you go at this same site today, it's a regular bustling intersection. So you don't even know that months ago, there were 38,000 people right here in the streets having a protest, marching down, taking over it. So it's like with photos, that's how people are able to see what goes on and what happens. And I really wanted to make sure that that work wasn't in vain, because if you go, as soon as you leave that spot, as soon as that day's over, all of that work is gone. If you weren't there to experience it, The only way that you're able to know that it happened is by way of photos and videos. And that's something that when you're able to really see it, it's much better than if I was to tell you 38,000 people were here. That's one thing, but to physically see it just really helps you connect with that. And if you look at Black History, and Black History Month is coming up in February, which is in a very short period of time, one of the things there is, how do we know what Dr. King did? How do we know what different civil rights groups did? That's because someone took their photos. It's because someone took video of them, wrote down what they talked about, what goes on, and what's happening there. So just to really show that strength and people coming together, we have to just make sure that, we're understanding that we're all human beings. This is through a pandemic, so we're taking care of ourselves, we're taking care of our mental health, and we're going out here, we're strong, we're fighting, but still there's a lot of hurt in that fight, and it can get very traumatic. So this is one of the photos I really wanted to make sure that we're showing folks what goes on out here, and that there is an entire range of emotions, because this is one of those shots that you may not see on the news, but it did happen, and we have to make sure that we are able to represent people in the correct light. This next photo here is from the same day at the same spot. This is just the angle. So one of the things that I've been mentioning is 38,000 people, but now you can see the image of what I'm talking about, as this is a street. This is an actual two-way street, and as far as the eye can see, it's full of people. And one of the things that I want you to look at is, look at the diversity here. Look at the number of white people that are here, that are coming out to stand up for Black lives. There are two signs there. One of the signs says Black Lives Matter by a guy who's wearing a Cub hat. And the second sign says, no one should have to teach their kids how to not get murdered. And that's a conversation that you see a lot in a Black household, of what to do when you're around police, and how to make sure you're staying safe, and how to make sure that you're making it home in that. And it's like, hey, no one should have to teach their kids how to not get murdered. So just this scene and people coming together, and it was 100% peaceful. There were no arrests. There were no moments of police activity. And there's some more photos of this in the book, which has 117 photos spanning 37 different demonstrations. One of the photos that I really love the most from this day is when we got to near Stewart Park, where the march finished, there were police officers across the street sitting alongside a building in the shade, and they were hanging out. They had their helmets off, their riot shields were down. Some of them were on their phone, they were eating snacks. And just to see, like, yeah, police officers are human beings too. And they're out here, and they're able to take a break and get a breather and not have to worry about being in conflict with people. But the fact that officers are able to sit there and not even have their eye on 38,000 people here, because they're all coming together peacefully, was one of the moments that I think really shows the spirit of Chicago, who Chicago is, what the people believe in. Another point that I'll mention is, being an independent photographer, there was no news outlet that these photos were released on. So all of this work was posted on my Twitter, posted on my Instagram, posted on my Facebook. So my Twitter and Instagram handles are the same, at Vashon_photo, VASHON_photo. And when I went out to the protest, in addition to taking photos, I was also live tweeting and taking video. So if you search my name, you search the title of the protest, this one here was Chicago March of Justice, you're going to see actual video from this day, June 6, 2020, and you're going to see live tweets and live updates of what happened. So I really gave you that full experience of, you see the photo, the edited picture that comes out afterwards, but in real time, if you're not there at the protest, we are in a global pandemic. I don't blame anyone for not wanting to come out and be around 38,000 people. That's the risk that we take. Fortunately, I haven't had any issues with health, any issues with COVID, being out around so many different people. But just to put this into perspective, all of the music festivals have been canceled in Chicago. Pitchfork Music Festival is around 15,000 people or so. The last time we had it, Lauryn Hill was a headliner. This crowd here is double the size of the entire Pitchfork Music Festival that happens. And just to reiterate, we are in a global pandemic, so you can see people are wearing their masks. there's no social distancing, but they're still taking whatever precautions they can just to make sure we're all staying safe, protecting ourselves and protecting each other. The next photo that I have here on the screen is from the Drag March for Change. This was on June 14th, and of course, the annual Pride Parade was canceled, but people came out, drag queens across Chicago. This is put together by Jemima. They came out and they had this march, but one of the things that I found most beautiful about this one was the march was about maybe 3 or 4 blocks, the shortest march that I've been to, and there was a speaking program, and the speaking program ran about 3 hours, and person after person after person came up on a podium, spoke their truth, and had this large audience there. I believe this was about 20,000 people. And this moment specifically, the organizers noticed there were a lot of white people that were at the front. I'm actually standing right in front of the stage. And they said that they want Black people and Black lives to be centered. So they said, all people of color come up to the front. So this was the moment where all of the Black people who were in the back of the march, and this is, for us, they were all the way in the back. They brought them all the way to the front, and they're coming up with their signs. They're coming up with their fists in the air, and they're making sure that they're centered. And you can just see a bunch of signs there, and they all say different things just to kind of speak to what's going on, what's happening. And one of the main signs that I saw there was all Black lives matter, no matter what you identify as. You matter, your life matter. You see the sign there, Black queer lives matter. So this was definitely one of the protests that I knew was really altering and able to help change what was going on. And actually, this photo from this day is already dated because at the time, this neighborhood was referred to as Boys Town. It is no longer referred to as Boys Town, and now it just goes by the actual name of North Halstead to make it more inclusive until a new name is decided upon. The next photo that's coming up on your screen is from Juneteenth, June 19th, 2020. There was a march called March for Us, the Million Man March Chicago. They had a few of these going on all around the country. And for this one, this was actually, I'm 21 years old. And this was my first time actually celebrating Juneteenth. So that was just a big moment for me to really be out here having this good time. I turned 21 on June 1st. I spent my birthday going around Chicago, taking photos of looting aftermath. So this was, just 18 days after. And I thought this photo was just very important for Chicago because you see people dancing. This is a parking lot right across from Jones College Prep High School in the South Loop. And then right above, you see, Chicago's famous L track going by and everyone dancing. You see the shirt the lady's wearing that says, legalize being Black. The speaker's there. And actually, in the book, I really tried to be as detailed as I possibly could be just to give you all of the information and really make sure that I was helping to put people in the scene of what was going on and what's happening. So in the photo caption, you're going to see that I even talked about the detail of what song they were dancing to, which was Juke Slide Pimp Walk by DJ Stack Ship of Chicago. So you can look at this photo, you can find that song, pull that song up, and then just kind of really put yourself in that position because now you're listening to what they're listening to. In the foreground of the shot, you see that there's a speaker there. So that's where they're blasting it from. And it was on wheels. So they rolled that down. We marched from here all the way over to Daly Plaza. And there's a sign. It's partially covered on the left side of the frame where it says white silence equals violence. And just to see folks having a good time. And with the book and with the photos, I really want you all to just pay attention to what is right out there in the forefront of the frame, but just also make those observations about what changes you see over the summer. One of the things you're going to see a lot in the beginning is a very diverse crowd of people coming together. As the time went on, one of the things that I noticed was the diversity started to decrease more and more and more. And when it was boiled down, we were left with young Black people of color that were leading and doing these protests. So that's an observation of how long does that diversity last? How long does people come out and say, all right, I'm out here for a protest? Because if you look around, May, and you look around June, a lot of people were going out to protest and they were taking photos. I'm out here, I'm protesting, maybe saying Black Lives Matter. But how long did your support last? How long did you stay? How many protests did you attend? What did you do afterwards? And with protests, for the most part, they're all put together by an organization. This organization is doing work every single day. So the protest is the one time where you see people actually coming together and, doing a large action to bring their demands and their voices. But it's like outside of the protest, every other day they're doing work. So it's like, I don't indict anyone for not coming out to a protest. I'm not saying that this is something that you have to do, because there's so many ways to put something together. But I want you to ask yourself is, what is it that you have contributed? What is it that you can contribute? Because at the end of the day, I think that the entire movement around Black lives is just to make a more just and equitable world for everyone. So if you look at some of the demands, you look at why people are asking them, it's like, you can get behind the hashtags and just really dig down deep into it and just try to figure out what's going on so we can all have a better understanding. But I think that, by way of photos and by way of, figuring out what's going on and what's happening, you're able to really connect yourself with the people there. In the book, it's not opinionated at all. Everything that you're going to see are captions that are news-like captions. They give you the date, the neighborhood, the name of the demonstration, the name of the people in the photo if I know it, and what they're doing. But there aren't any type of opinions or viewpoints that I'm pushing on people. I want this book to be a discussion piece that you can take and look at what's going on and what's happening here in Chicago. And you can connect that to all of the scenes that you're going to see playing out across the country, because people are still protesting. So as I mentioned, we marched from the South Loop across from Jones High School to Daly Plaza, and this photo was actually shot towards the end. So I want to go back a frame, and you're going to see, if you look at the left side of the photo, you see that white silence equals violence. And now as I go forward, you see that same sign there. So this is the same day. And this was right after we did the swag surf. Everyone, put their fists in the air. The lady right front and center was actually jumping up and down. You can see some of that motion blur in her photo. There was a photographer right below me from the Chicago Tribune who has this exact same frame from a different angle. And this was the cover of the Tribune the following day. And, you see the Pan-African flags, you see a lot of folks coming together. Pay attention to the age ranges there. If you look at the white silence equals violence sign, directly below it, you see a young lady there. And then you look over to the right side of the frame with the lady with the red mask on, you can just see a large swath of ages that are coming out here. But this was one of the days that I thought was pretty powerful, because as much as, it's encouraged for a lot of people to come out to these protests, this felt like a day for Black people, by Black people, and they're all together just to have this moment. And the lady, she's holding a sign that says, "I'm here so my kids won't have to be." And right under that, her shirt says, her ancestors' wildest dreams. One of the things that really captivated the nation recently was Amanda Gorman's speech at the inauguration. I went through and looked at the transcript from her speech, and one of the things that she talked about was how we all have to come together to make a better future for those who come after us. And that's one of the things about the protests. It's like a lot of people are out here not just fighting for themselves, but we're all fighting for the next generation and to make a better tomorrow for those that come after us. So it's like the work I'm doing today is to make it a little easier for those who come behind me and so on and so forth, because this work definitely does take time, but it's a fight and it's worth fighting, because you're going to see that actual gains are being made, actual improvements are being made, but it really takes everyone coming together. Right here, we're in Chicago, one of the largest cities in the country, 2.7 million people here. And the diversity here in Chicago is unlike any other place. So it's like when you have one group of people raising up an issue and you look at that out of 2.7 million people, it may seem like they don't really have someone behind them. They don't have enough of a majority to make city leaders say, okay, this is something that we should do. So when we have people of all backgrounds coming together to say, I support this, whether or not I'm personally impacted by it, but I'm supporting it, that's one of the things that can really help make this work go and be expedited. This image here is from a BIPOC Who Do You Protect rally. And this was actually held at the intersection right outside of the Columbus statue. I'm sure a lot of you all know about the different protests that went on there. And the Columbus statue was up. 2020 is a year that the statue came down. And in this frame, you have two female protesters here, and they're surrounded by police officers. So I thought that this was a frame that just really showed the relations of Black people and police in this city and in this country. They're here. One is armed with the cell phone. The other one is armed with a megaphone. But they're surrounded by all of these men and women with guns, with tasers, with weapons. And it's like, assess the threat level here. What threat do these two pose? Like, what are they armed with? There's nothing there, but they're in this world where they're surrounded. And it's like the only thing that they have is a cell phone, and that's it. And the megaphone to lift up their voices and to show what's happening to people. And one of the things that I say a lot when I'm talking about the photos and why it's important to cover it is some of the experience that people of not just Black people, people of all backgrounds go through in this country are so extreme and so outrageous that you truly have to see it to believe it. But 87 years, the Columbus statue was up in Chicago. 87 years, it was installed. The one over, it was two, but the one over in Grant Park was installed in 1933, and 2020 was the year that it came down. So you have to just take that into account and just honor and respect the fact that there is movement and protest. There is reasons to come out here and do this work and lift your voices up, because who would have thought after 87 years that 2020 would be the year that it came down? But because of people's work, because of people's actions, there was movement. This is from that same protest. And one of the things that I want to point out is the original protest, the people that you see doing the swag surf in the first row were there originally. The second row, you're going to see a line of mainly white people back there. So what actually happened was at the same time, there was a Trump out protest all the way down at the Trump Tower, Chicago. And all of the protesters from the Trump protest came down and joined the Columbus statue protest, and the numbers tripled. But that was just a beautiful moment to see folks coming together, two different protests, and they're all coming to lift their voices up, and it completely changed it. And there's a video, and this is on Twitter, when I actually have the moment where the protests merge, and it was just this incredible shot where you see maybe 100 people all running and skateboarding down the street. Folks have their fists in the air, they're yelling and they're screaming like reinforcements have arrived, and then they all come together and they join this protest. So it's like, I think right now, just because of how politicized this world is, it's almost like you're either BLM or you're a Trump supporter. And that's really how this thing is coming together. But look at both sides of that, and we're going to talk about this. There's actually a couple frames coming up where you're going to see the difference between the two different protests. So before I give you the difference, I'm going to just let you see the photo that's coming up. But take one last look at this image, and I'll make sure I come back to it. Notice the diversity here. Notice the joy and the laughter here. Notice that not everyone is wearing their mask properly, but notice that everyone at least has a mask, whether it's on their face or on their neck. And we're going to come back to this just after this frame here. So this is from a Freedom Square rally. This was July 24th, and this is JJ. I believe at the time he was 18 or 19 years old, and he's dancing here right across from the infamous CPD Black site, where there was a lot of cases with torture and different things that were going on there. And you can search up the Holman Square facility with Chicago Police Department just to get some more background details on that and get the facts there. But I just thought this is a beautiful moment because you see how the arts come into this. A lot of the youth organizers and activists in this movement are artists, and they are coming together and they're doing what they do best: singing, dancing, poetry, to really make a stand. One of the things I want to point out about JJ, who's here, is as I went through and photographed dozens of protests all across the city, I noticed some of the same people time and time again. So you look at JJ here, and you may get whatever impressions you have of him. You may think, he's a young person. He's dancing. He's coming out just to make a better tomorrow, as mentioned. There was a protest on August 15th down in the Loop. JJ was there. I probably saw him the most out of anyone else this summer, and he was pepper sprayed by police. So just that juxtaposition of he's here, he's dancing in front of this large crowd, completely harmless. And then a few weeks later, I have photos of him being assisted by people, can't breathe, can't see, because his entire face is full of pepper spray from doing the same things that he was doing today. So just going through, and that just also speaks to just the photograph, right? You can post a photo of JJ with, trying to recover from pepper spray. And it's crazy. I actually have photos of this on my Instagram. There's one post dedicated to him specifically, but he was smiling even after, being pepper sprayed, and people rinsed his face off and they helped him out. And he was still able to come back and crack a smile, and still that energy and that spirit was not broken. And that was one of the things that you see a lot, especially with Black people, that's that energy and that spirit is not there. And I'll pull that up. I'll just ask tech support just to bring me back up on the screen here, and I'll go through this tab and pull that frame up of JJ from this day, because you're just really able to see like what's going on, what's happening with these people, and just that entire just juxtaposition of what they can be doing one day and how it goes to the next day, and all of the different people there. The next frame that we have here is from a police rally. So what's going on here, you see they have the shirt, Blue Lives Matter, John Catanzaro for mayor 2023, with the thin blue line flag. And I'll just let you take in this photo just for a moment here, and then I'll go back and bring in the observations from the other frame. So as you can see here, look at some of the differences between, what goes on with this specific protest here. And then if we go back over to the this protest, just look at the difference. So both of these photos were shot in the same place. This is at the Columbus statue. This is on the sidewalk, and look at the diversity there. There is no diversity there. Look at the mask wearing. There's just one person there with the mask pulled down. There are people that don't have a mask on completely. So you're looking at that, and then you have to decide. It's like they're just a rational side. And there's a great comment there from Diana that says, "Blue lives matter until they're trying to storm the Capitol." And that's very true. The same people that were out here with Blue Lives Matter flags, the same folks that were out here saying back the blue and support the police, stormed the Capitol, which left a police officer dead, which another officer was crushed. And he talked about his experience, his eyes being gouged out. So it's like, what are you really fighting for? Over the summer, we thought they had a stance of pro-police and a stance of coming together. And I don't know. I don't really know how to describe what they had going on, but they tried to really talk about, like, this is maybe what they thought, this is what they believed in. And then you go through and you look at what goes on at the Capitol, and it's like they completely backtracked and reneged on what they're talking about. So if you look at what's going on with Black Lives Matter and you look at that movement and that fight, the demands have stayed the same. The activists are changing over. We just celebrated MLK Day, and he would still be alive today, but he was assassinated. That's one of the things we have to make sure that, we're thinking about. It wasn't that he got old or he died of natural causes. He was assassinated for doing this work. So it's like the people are going through and people are changing out. But when you look at the juxtaposition of one side of the Blue Lives Matter and the other side of the pro-police, you really have to take into account of who's on the simple side of humanity and making a better tomorrow and ending white supremacy. One of the questions that I was asked at a previous event was about, like, safety at these protests. So what I will say is this is the only time that I saw any instances of violence between civilians. There was a line, there was on the sidewalk was the Blue Lives Matter supporters, the street were police officers, and then the other side was the some counter protests. Because one thing about Chicago, best believe, if you come here talking about Trump, you're gonna get counter protesters. A Blue Lives Matter supporter punched a young Black kid in his face, right in the mouth. Another photographer has a photo, the moment of impact. It was a barrier between them, punched him right in the mouth. Nothing happened to him. No police officers did anything to the guy. They let it happen. But it's like police can't operate in that way of, if you like me as a cop and you support me, you can do whatever you want with immunity, as we've seen. And if you don't like me, then I'm going to break the law and I'm not going to be impartial. I'm not going to be objective. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to, just really make your life a living hell and not follow the law that I'm supposed to follow. So those are the things that we have to understand, that you can't do those things, and we have to operate in a just society. But far too often, unfortunately, we're not really seeing that happen. We're not seeing that take place. And that's one of the points that I want to make sure that people are seeing and that people understand when we're looking at what's going on both sides, looking at who's who and what's doing what. Just really take a step back and just kind of figure out who's in this fight to really make sure that everyone is able to live a peaceful and a good life, and who's really in it for themselves. One of the things that I mentioned to you guys earlier was that photo of JJ who was dancing. So here's the frame here, and I put this together on my Instagram account just to really hone in on that point that I was talking about. This is the same guy, 3 different protests. You see him, he's dancing, having a good time on the left side of the frame, on the right side of the frame. And then right there in the middle, he's here and he is flushing his eyes out from being pepper sprayed by police. So it's like you have to think about, this is the same guy. What harm is he posing? He's not coming out here to sow division amongst people. He's coming out to lift up his voices. But across the way And these are the reasons why it's important to follow folks like myself and follow journalists who are out here covering this, because that's a detail that most news outlets, well, not even most, I don't think any person pointed this out but myself. So it's like, if you're not out here doing this work consistently, you may not really know what's going on and you may not know what's happening. But because I'm the same person out time and time again, I understand what's going on. I see the same people and I can recognize, oh, you just got arrested by police last week. You just gave this rousing speech 2 weeks ago, and now today you're being pepper sprayed by police officers. So I can give you those nuances and those details of someone who's been all across the board. No organizer, no activist is going to be at a Trump rally and going to be at a abolish police rally. That just doesn't happen. People stay with whatever their missions are, but I'm someone that's out here showing all of that. The next frame is one of my most popular frames from the summer. This is on Mayor Lightfoot's birthday, actually. And there was a protest that was going through her neighborhood. They stopped outside of this restaurant for about 20 minutes here. And they actually danced and they protested. And this was right in front of a restaurant. So we are in a pandemic, but there are still people, here at the diner. And I just thought this was just a really interesting shot just to show the disconnection in humanity. It's like, we're all in the same city. What affects someone on the south side is going to affect someone on the north side. But they're just here and they're just watching. It's like, how can you be so disconnected from what's going on, from your people, from the human experience? And, one of the things that we've really seen is a lot of people just coming out and watching the protest and looking at it like it's a show. And it's like, this isn't your entertainment show. This isn't dinner and a movie. These are real people coming out, fighting for their lives, fighting for real issues. But just this frame of the people coming together outside on the street. And then you see this couple just inside, and the lady's just eating her pizza because it's like she's not affected. But we can't operate in a society where if you're not affected personally, you don't care. And we see the same thing with the COVID-19 pandemic, where there are people that are going out here that are causing the spread, that are not wearing their mask, that are not social distancing. But then as soon as it affects them or someone close to them, they want to speak up and take action. And it's like, if you would have that same amount of energy, have that same amount of fight when it didn't affect you, you wouldn't get to the point where you have to be personally impacted. So what I want to do with my photography, what I want to do with these conversations is show people, hey, have a little bit of humanity, have a little bit of heart and some fight and some strength when it affects someone else, because what's going to happen is it's going to reach your doorstep. And we have to live in a world where we can imagine a better tomorrow. We have to be able to imagine things that we can't see right now. So it's like, look at what happened with the Capitol. Look at Ashley Babbitt, who was shot and killed by a police officer. And it's like, she may not have been able to imagine a world where she would be able to storm the Capitol and be shot for what she's doing. But it's like, yeah, everyone can see this. So I just thought that was just so wild to see the same people that are saying Blue Lives Matter now saying, F the police, which is something that you saw a lot on the opposite end. So it's like, now when you are a victim of police violence, you want to support folks who have been victims since the beginning of time, back when police officers were slave catchers. And now you're getting this religion to come together. But what I'm asking for everyone to do is come together before it reaches your doorstep, because that day is going to come. Don't be these people here where you're just looking at them outside the window and think, oh, I don't care because I'm not affected by this. We are all affected by this. And just, you have to think about it. The audacity. I'm a photographer, so I'm actually going in with my camera. I'm 6'4", so I promise it was very hard to miss me. I was in this restaurant for maybe 2 minutes, and I have to walk right in through the door. I'm standing right behind them. Everyone in the restaurant is aware of my presence. But in that small 2 minutes of time, they're still sitting there eating. And it's like, you have no shame. If I was them and I saw a photographer come in, I would be trying to make myself look like I'm doing something for the photo. But no, she's still eating. He's still viewing it. And that was one of the things that we saw a lot this summer. And there are more frames around this issue because a lot of these moments are things that I saw multiple times. I want to just skip around here. I'm going to come back and show you guys the rest of the images, but I want to just quickly skip around to this frame here. This is another protest, and it's just like the same idea. And I put this photo on Twitter, and the caption was, "Number 1 tourist attraction in Chicago, oppression." You see protesters in the street. You see police officers with their bikes pushing them off the street. But yet this couple is here, and they're taking a selfie, and you can clearly see that they're smiling. So that disconnection in humanity is what's really holding us back. And we have to all be able to come together, use our own privileges in whatever way, whether it's a race privilege or a gender privilege, whatever you have, to really advance us. One of the comments that someone mentioned to me, which now I can't unsee it. They mentioned that if you look at the guy who's taking a selfie, if you look at his head, the lights on a police car resembles Mickey Mouse ears. And it's like, to them, this is Disneyland. And oh my God, this is what we saw on TV and now it's here. Let's get a selfie. And I can't imagine what the caption will be. And with those lights, it was like, yeah, he's in Disneyland. This is a game, but it's like, this is real people and it's real lives. I went out here and I took the photos, but it's like, I'm not happy about the reason I'm out here. I wish that I didn't have to cover this. I wish that I didn't have to deal with the issues that are going on here in just today's society and cover what's going on. I wish that, there aren't these senseless killings that make us have to be out here. But it's like, it just shows that this is real life. This is real society that's happening. I'm going to just roll through some of the other images and just give just smaller presentations on these, just so we can have time for a question and answer portions if you guys have more things to add to this. So this frame here is from the August 15th protest, which is the back cover of the book. And this is the same one where that shot of JJ is from, where he was pepper sprayed. The next frame that we have here is as protesters were leaving and heading back in past Grant Park. They stopped shortly outside of Millennium Park, actually, for a short rally. The sun was coming down. I got that sunset glow right in there. It was raining. And there's a sign. You can't read it. I'll read it for you, but it says 201 plus school resource officers, school liaison supervisors assigned to CPS, 2,354 misconduct complaint records on file against them, $33 million funds, CPD and CPS while our schools fall apart. The next image here is from a Cops Out of CPS protest. So this is members of University of Chicago Bangor. They're dancing with demonstrators. So they were protesting outside of CPS Board of Education member Cynthia Revelori's home. This is a couple of days before they took the Cops Out CPS protest. And right after they did the speaking portion, so we had news cameras there for the speaking portion. Even I think a news outlet did a live shot. And then because there was no conflict, they left. So no TV cameras got the dancing. I stayed there from beginning to end and I photographed this, but you won't see this on the news, not because they chose not to show it. They chose not to even cover it. They got the speaking portion. And it's like, why was this not important enough for folks to stay on August 15th? Every other time where they were clashed with police, the news was there and they were there early, the entire protest until the last person left. But for this one, they didn't want to give more than 20 minutes of their time because it was speaking portions. So no one got this where University of Chicago Bangor, they're dancing and they actually, and there's an entire Twitter thread, as I mentioned earlier, they're here and they taught them to dance and they did this entire dance together. And the next day was another Cops Out CPS protest in the Austin neighborhood on the west side of Chicago. And that's actually the cover of the book from that day. So the photo that you're seeing, the cover of the book, both of these are actually back-to-back days fighting for the same thing. So, there were times here, and this was still while I was in school, so I was bouncing all of these, but there are moments here where we saw back-to-back protests, multiple protests in a day, all of that was happening. So this is the shot that I just put up on the cover of the book. as I just mentioned. And if you look, kind of right in the center, you see two people leaning up on the car, a young lady in a white t-shirt. And guess who it is right next to her? There's JJ, once again, who we saw earlier dancing at the Freedom Square rally, being pepper sprayed on August 15th. There he is right there. And I really thought that was important to have the leading photo of the book be something on the west side of Chicago. And the final image is probably something that many of you all heard about, was the dreadhead cowboy who took the Dan Ryan and rode his horse down. So I was actually with him for this day, and I'm the only person who was on the expressway with him and got this frame. So I'm actually standing on the expressway here, looking down, and this image speaks for itself. But this was one of the things that I really have to point out, and all of this is in the book. He held two marches before this one. This one on the Dan Ryan, there was one in Woodlawn, one in Inglewood. All three had the exact same purpose, the exact same mission, which was he was coming out because there were many children in 2020, you can look this up, many children were shot, many children were killed, and just senseless gun violence, stray bullets, all of that. And he was coming out to shine a light on that and try to get some support and some resources. I'm the only person who covered both of his marches. There were not one single news outlet in the first one. The second one, we had one outlet that came out to write a story. No TV cameras whatsoever covered it. And then he went on the Dan Ryan because he realized that people don't care about what's going on. I'm telling you, we had kids out there marching and dancing. This is around the time of the Bud Billiken Day Parade, which for the first time in its history was canceled in 2020. He went on the Dan Ryan, and this made international news. I've had outlets reaching out to me in the Middle East. They show this in BBC in the Middle East. They talked about this, and this completely went out. So it's like we have to think about how we consume our news and what news chooses to portray. Because 3 marches, all the exact same purpose, but you didn't hear about it until he took his horse on the Dan Ryan. But it's like the mission was the same. So we have to understand that what's important here is not him on this horse, not him on the Dan Ryan, but it's the children who have died, who have been shot, and their lives have changed forever because of the issues going on in this society. And he did a press conference after this, and I found this just very jarring to me. He did the press conference at 63rd and Woodlawn, and 63rd and Woodlawn is actually the site where he finished the very first Kids Lives Matter march. No cameras there, aside from my own and his hired videographer. When he came back at the same location to do the press conference after this march, there were about 13 cameras there. The exact same spot, 13 cameras there. And one of the reporters asked him, like, why this place? Why this spot? And I'm like, you guys don't even understand that. Just weeks ago, he was here giving out free food, free horseback rides, dance competitions, coming together for a positive event. None of you were here. But now all of you all have the time to come out, hoping to get some tidbit from him to make some type of newsworthy story about this march. So I really want to, and I really hope that I was able to achieve this goal of showing that we can tell our own stories. We don't have to wait aside from someone else to come in and do it. And we have the license to talk about what we have going on ourselves. And after what happened here, I've had news outlets reaching out to me to cover this and cover the book. So it's like the news works for the people. They talk about what's important. They talk about what people want to hear and they want to listen to. So even if the one thing you want to start from today to contribute to the movement is something as simple as sharing what folks may not see. People, you all on this live stream may not have known about what he did in Woodlawn, what he did in Inglewood. And your orbit, your friend group may not know about it as well. So maybe something that you want to try to do is amplify that, because if I give you a morsel of a story, your entire synopsis is based off that morsel. But if I give you all of the details, all of the facts, then you're able to really go through there and say, okay, now I understand the full picture and I have that context there. So with the book, 37 demonstrations, 117 images, and I give you all of the 3-act structures. There were 2 big rounds of looting. The second round of looting was spurred by the police shooting of Latrell Allen. What you're going to see in the book is we have photos from the crime scene. I was actually there, photos of the post-looting, and photos of the protest. So I'm giving you the entire picture. I'm giving you that full synopsis so you can see what happens here. But, thank you all for joining me. I hope you were able to really take away something from this discussion. I have the slide up there with my social media handles. If you guys have any further questions that I can answer outside of this, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram. And big thank you to the Society for having me on today. I hope you guys were able to enjoy this discussion.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much. That was really great. And we are going to get to questions in just a minute. But first, we are going to take a short break to do our virtual basket passing. So we are asking people if you are able to make contributions at ethicalhumanistsociety.org/donate or with Zelle to donate at ethicalhuman.org. We suggest a donation of $5, but any amount that you're comfortable with is greatly appreciated. It is with your generosity, through your generosity, that we're able to sustain the society and bring in great speakers like Vashon. After the virtual collection, we will return for Q&A, so you can begin thinking about your questions and entering them in the chat box. All right, let's get started with our Q&A. So the first question is, thanks for the great talk. What are your career plans, and do you think you can earn a living pursuing this kind of journalism?
Yeah, definitely. One of the was me coming together with independent photography And in the future, I may look into more photojournalism, shooting for a news outlet. And I guess, I really just want to make the point that I'm not anti-media in Chicago, and I see myself as someone who is a supplement to media and just helping to give you that well-rounded story and just show more of what they may not be able to show just because they have a lot to talk about. So I'm definitely going to continue with that. In school, I'm pursuing a degree in television. So I start my final semester of school tomorrow. So getting out of here, expected to graduate in May with my bachelor's degree in television with a concentration of production and directing from Columbia College Chicago. But no matter what I do, I'm always going to continue to photograph Chicago and show what's going on, what's happening, because photography is what I love to do. And I really feel at home when I'm here taking photos. Even back in high school, I'm only 3.5 years removed from high school. At homecoming and all the school events, I will be the kid there with my camera taking pictures. But I was able to really enjoy myself by being behind the camera and capturing those moments. So no matter what it is I go off and decide to do, I'm definitely going to go through and continue with doing this realm of photography. I could, of course, do it for a news outlet, make that full-time work or freelance work to get paid off of it. But nevertheless, whatever I'm doing, I'll always try to make time to come out and continue this work.
Great. Next question. You showed such beautiful examples of art and expression at progressive events. Did you see anything similar at other protests?
Yeah, definitely. There were a lot of moments where there are people coming together and creating actual artwork at the protests that were happening there, express themselves, as you saw with JJ dancing at the protest. So all of that was there in that artistic form. And, as I mentioned earlier, many of the people that were going through and actually organizing these protests and leading them are artists themselves. And they were finding different ways to express and show what was going on and what's happening. But from the signs, from the Chicago March of Justice on June 6th, they actually had an artist there who created a mural live right there from the beginning of the rally to the end. They created an entire live mural. I believe that they auctioned it off or they had a raffle or something like that. But there was a ton of artwork there. There's another book by Chris and Zachary Slaughter, father-son duo, called Boarded Up Chicago. And they went around the city and photographed. It's also available on Amazon. They went around the city and photographed boarded up businesses that had artwork on them and murals on them. And I think that really just speaks to the resiliency of Chicago for folks to come out one day and to loot, but then other people in the community are going to come out here and make it look like something, add artwork to it, add their expression, just because when you're going around and you're seeing these boarded up businesses, when you're seeing the loss of that community support, what the community relies on, for folks to come out here and make that look beautiful, because it definitely has an emotional toll on you just to see your community in such despair in the loop. But that's what we see on the south and west sides every single day, boarded up homes, empty, vacant lots. But just to really show that resiliency of Chicagoans to come out, because you all probably saw scenes of looting on your TV screens the day it happened, but the next day, members of the community who actually lived there and not the ones that did the loot in their own neighborhood, they came out to help the business owners sweep up the glass, pick up the trash, and repair those businesses. So that's a image, that's a book that you can go ahead and buy on Amazon, Boarded Up Chicago, and just so you can see some of the artwork that was all across. Of course, some of those boards are down now. I believe they're actually working with the city of Chicago to preserve those and make those into different pieces of art. Some of them have already been preserved in some capacity, but you can definitely look that up online and see what's happening to those boards. But all of those boards with the artwork on them have not been destroyed.
How do you emotionally deal with performance activism?
Honestly, for me, going through and covering so much in such a short span of time, like I mentioned, there were times where I was doing 3 a day, back-to-back days. And, it's hard to really process it and see and understand what's happening. But I will say that being around these protests and being around members of the community, I always felt love and I always felt that acceptance there. The only time that we saw any type of opposition was from the police department. But being around the people, and as you see in the images, and you can just look at the cover of the book again, there are people coming together and they're dancing and they're having a good time. And that's why I mentioned the work that I did. It didn't feel like work. And that's why I was fine with going out here and doing it completely free of charge. But they're dancing and they're having a good time. So it's like, yeah, I'm behind the camera, but you better believe after I took that shot, I got in too, and I felt that movement and I felt that spirit. So, coming together with these people really helped to make that load a bit lighter. Doing these kind of discussions are helping me to be able to just kind of process what I saw and what's going on there.
Great. Next question is, I was struck by how visible you were, you were in the Blue Lives Matter protest photo, all eyes on the photographer. Did you find yourself more or less visible as a documentarian at different sites?
Actually, more and more and more. So I grew a huge following from doing this. When I started covering the protests, I had about 1.5 thousand followers on Twitter, and in about 2 weeks I gained 10,000 followers. One night was like 3,000, and after that 2-week period, as I went out to different protests, people were recognizing me. Like, actually, people were saying, "Oh, you're the guy from Twitter," or "You're Vashon," and people were coming out and they were thanking me for my work. But I definitely noticed that there was a heightened presence. It's because people understood that I was there to show what was going on, what was happening. I wasn't there to disparage what was going on. Even in that Blue Lives Matter photo, I was in front of the stage. So, but I was there. And I guess that, no matter what your belief is, I think we can all agree that everyone wants a little bit of respect and everyone wants to be treated with kindness. So from there, it's like, yeah, I was there and my personal viewpoints and opinions may be different from those that are at that Blue Lives Matter protest. But at the same time, it's like, I didn't come there and insult anybody. I didn't come there and disparage anyone. I just came there to photograph it. So I didn't have any issue with them. No one attacked me. No one said anything negative to me. Actually, here's just a little story about that. I was wearing like a crew neck and like this jacket, but it was super, super hot that day. And one of the like lady with the Trump supporter gear on, she was like, "Are you okay? Like, you must be really hot there." And it's like, even though our viewpoints may be different, she was still able to come and check on me just about just the temperature there. So I was definitely making sure that I was being cautious of not disrespecting someone's space, because I just felt that for me personally, you all are coming together. You will have whatever viewpoints you have there. For me, it's just not in good faith to come and disparage that, to jump in the middle of that and take away from what you have going on, because we all have that freedom of speech here in this country. But, being 6'4" is really hard for me to be in the background anyway. So I was definitely very visible, but all of the interactions that I received were pretty positive.
Are you still working on this project? And what else are you working on now?
It's definitely
semester.
Yeah. Very true. School is the number one priority. So that's definitely going to be what I'm buckling down on for the next 15 weeks. But as far as this work, I never intended on making a book. All of the photos that you see in here, when I took these shots, I wasn't thinking about a book in this case. I wasn't thinking about any type of way of preserving these off of social media. I promise you, if I was, I would have taken more caution on having good framing there and having ways to make sure that my aspect ratios were something that could work for a book. But I'm still photographing protests, still photographing community events, still photographing moments that really shaped Chicago. When the election was called for Joe Biden, I was the third photographer down at Trump Tower. There were 2 photographers there from the Chicago Tribune. I was number 3, right there in the morning. And I photographed as people were starting to build up outside of Trump Tower. So I was there before the streets were blocked off. And I have that footage when the police officers closed down the street. I was there when it was just 30 people. And then when it grew to hundreds of people out there, to have a shot of a guy popping a bottle of champagne and doing that all over the place. So I'm still covering that. I'm still doing this work. As far as making more books, I'm not sure if that's going to be in the future for me. Of course, if you would have asked me May 29th what my future will look like, none of this was a part of that. I promise this was not a part of the plan at all. My goal was 2020 was my last full year of school. Buckle down, take care of school, because 2021 was the year I'll be graduating and just kind of moving off into full-time work. So all of this that I've done was not the plan at all. It just completely derailed my entire life. But here we are, and we're taking it day by day. So I'll definitely see what the future holds. But, you can check out my social medias. I just posted some photos today regarding an issue going on in Chicago with the Bucket Boys of Chicago. You can check that out just a little bit more about what's happening. But I will definitely continue that. But as far as projects I'm working on, I'm really making sure that I'm tamping this book down to history. Keep an eye on my social media in the coming weeks. I'm going to be making some very big announcements regarding really getting this book stamped down in time and stamped down in history.
Can you tell us more about the protest in Austin? Were there protests on the west side and south side that did not get much media attention?
I don't know if there were much of any protests on the south and west sides that really got media attention. A lot of it was focused on the Loop, and when folks were downtown. The cover of the book, like you mentioned, I said it earlier, that was on the west side. That was in Austin. I was the only person there covering that. There were no TV cameras there. There are a lot, and this is really one of the reasons why I felt that I had to put this together in a book. I had to cement this down, because if I wasn't there covering this, there would be no record of it. And if we pull back up the cover of the image, what I want you to notice is no one has a cell phone. No one's recording what's going on here. So if you don't have someone there that's documenting the moment and documenting what's happening, you won't be able to see what's going on. In the book, as I mentioned, every caption tells you the neighborhood that the photo was shot in. So you can even go through and just start to make your own list and just see what's going on and what's happening. So, of course, I spent a lot of time in the Loop. The second neighborhood that I spent the most time in was Inglewood on the south side of Chicago. I spent a ton of time there, and there were a bunch of different events that you're going to see when you all look at the book. But Inglewood was the second place, and I'm telling you, the news coverage was very, very minimal, if any. And then, and that's just another discussion just about, even when there was news coverage, how it was covered. Was it handled responsibly? There are definitely images in this book, including the cover, that are exclusive. No news outlets have these moments. The only way you will be able to see it is through my coverage, which is why I wanted to make sure that I got this stamped down. And there are going to be some announcements coming soon about being able to obtain the book in Chicago for free.
After attending these demonstrations across the city, how do you feel about the call to incorporate social workers and mental health response teams into policing?
That's definitely one of the biggest arguments that was out here around this summer. I support the idea. I know that there's already been different programs implemented across the country. There have been some ordinances and some aldermen here in Chicago trying to bring that in. There are definitely, times where it's not needed for a uniformed officer with a gun to come to and respond to these. But one of the things that I think that police officers can agree on as well is we've really asked a lot of our police officers around the country, and we're asking them to do a ton of stuff. The job of policing has grown so much from just responding to crime, but now it's like you are responding to mental health crises, and you're responding to different things that you may not be so equipped on how to deal with it. So we really have to start to pull back what it is that police officers are used for, what is it they have to respond to. So definitely making sure that when we look at the different crises that are happening, sending the proper person there, because at the end of the day, If you call 911, you need help, whether it's a medical emergency, whether there's a crime, whether there's a fire, you need help. So we should try to expand it from just you get police, fire, or EMT. When you're only getting fire or EMT if it's a medical emergency, everything else is police officers. So we should definitely try to look at what's going on and what's happening so we can send the appropriate people to make sure that the situations themselves are not being worsened by police officers, but they're actually being helped.
Excuse my barking dog in the background. How did you get the book published and what went into that?
So the book, I went through Kindle Direct Publishing, which is owned by Amazon. So I created it all myself. All the captions, all the photos, the cover of the book, I went through that. Actually, here's a fun fact since you asked. I used Google Slides to put this together. So everything that you see in the book was created with the Google Slideshow. I think we've all made a PowerPoint before or a Google Slideshow. That's what this is. And it was a lot of trial and error. I don't know anyone who's made a book before. So just that entire process was not easy by far. There were a bunch of mistakes that I made going through. I did try to go the route of a publisher in the beginning, but I noticed that with that, it's really based on money. These folks, they are doing this for profit. They're doing it for money, and it costs a lot to hire a designer, hire folks to work with you, doing pre-sales, getting the books printed. It's a lot in there. So I was able to find a way that I can do the book. And, Kindle Direct Publishing through Amazon, they actually print each book made to order. So I don't have a hand in any of that. You buy the book from Amazon, they print it for you, they ship it out for you, they take care of all of that, because I wanted to make sure that I can do the book and not be discouraged by not having a publisher. And also, if I was doing this where it was pre-sales and I was getting the books printed and I was shipping them out, it would just be difficult for me to handle with school. And I wanted to make sure that for years and years to come, so as long as Amazon's around, you're going to be able to get a fresh copy of the book. There are a couple announcements coming out with different ways other than Amazon to get it. But it was just a lot of trial and error there. But if you're thinking about making a book yourself, definitely look up Kindle Direct Publishing. They walk you through the entire process because this book was self-published.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for such a great presentation. And I am going to end with a quote. This is actually just a very small bit from Amanda Gorman's stunning inaugural poem. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried. Thank you all so much for joining us today and hope to see you at the coffee hour.